Imagine a world where one person holds all the power. Think about it. Your voice wouldn't matter. Decisions that shape your life, your family's future, and the world around you would be made in secrecy, without your input, without accountability. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? Now take a moment to appreciate this. The United States government was designed specifically to prevent that nightmare. It's not perfect, far from it, but it's one of humanity's boldest experiments in balancing power, ensuring justice, and giving people a voice. So, how exactly does it work? How does the United States divide power to ensure no one hand holds it all? Stay with me, because in this video, we're not just scratching the surface. By the end of this journey, you'll walk away with a deep understanding of the system and, more importantly, you'll realize just how much power you truly hold within it. And trust me, it's more than you think. But let me start with a question. What's the real reason the Founding Fathers were so obsessed with dividing power? The answer might surprise you, and it's not just about fairness. Let's dive in. Segment 1. The philosophy behind division of power. The division of power in the United States government wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It wasn't something that came to the Founding Fathers in a flash of inspiration. No, this idea was the product of centuries of human history, a history marked by failures, abuses of power, and lessons learned the hard way. From ancient empires to medieval kingdoms to early modern tyrannies, history is full of stories where too much power in too few hands led to catastrophic results. Kings ruled with iron fists, and citizens had no say. The Founding Fathers knew these stories well. They studied them, learned from them, and swore not to repeat them. When they sat down to draft the Constitution, they had one goal in mind: to create a government strong enough to govern, but not so strong that it could oppress. They wanted a system that could withstand the test of time and protect against the corruption that absolute power so often brings. The result? A carefully crafted system of checks and balances, a system where power is divided and no single branch of government can dominate the others. And before you say it, yes, the Constitution is old. It's so old, in fact, that if it were a person, it'd probably be complaining about back pain and reminiscing about the good old days. But it's also one of the most powerful, forward-thinking documents ever written. How many of us can say we've actually read it from start to finish? Be honest. When was the last time you even skimmed it? Exactly. But how does this centuries-old piece of paper create a government where no single person, no single group, can hold all the power? To understand that, we need to look at the three branches of government. This is where the real genius of the system comes to light. Segment 2. The three branches of government. At its core, the U.S. government operates like a well-balanced machine, with three distinct gears: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. Each one has a unique role, but none can function in isolation. They're interconnected, and that's what makes the system so fascinating and so effective when it works as intended. 1. The legislative branch, Congress. Let's start with the legislative branch, often referred to simply as Congress. It's the branch tasked with creating laws. If you think of the government as an architect designing the framework of society, Congress is the drafting table. It's where ideas are debated, plans are laid out, and the blueprints for our nation's future are drawn. Now, Congress itself is divided into two chambers, the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House is the people's chamber, where representatives are chosen based on population. It's where your voice, as a citizen, is meant to resonate most strongly. On the other hand, the Senate ensures every state, big or small, has an equal say. This two-chamber system was a brilliant compromise, but let's be honest, it's not always a harmonious marriage. When Congress can't agree, we get gridlock. But here's a question. Is gridlock a sign of failure, or is it actually a feature of the system? Hold that thought. We'll explore that later. And here's a fun fact for you. Did you know Congress is the only branch with the power to declare war? That's right. Despite what movies and TV shows might lead you to believe, the president can't just wake up one morning and decide to go to war. Surprised? Let's move on. 2. The executive branch, the president and beyond. Now let's talk about the executive branch, led by the president, the most visible figure in American government. But here's the thing. While the president is often seen as the most powerful person in the country, their role is more about enforcing the laws than making them. The president's job is to take the legislation passed by Congress and ensure it's implemented. Of course, this isn't a one-person job. The executive branch includes the cabinet, federal agencies, and countless civil servants who handle everything from national security to public health. But here's a twist. What happens when a president oversteps their authority? It's happened before, and it could happen again. The system includes safeguards like impeachment and judicial review, but those processes can be contentious and, at times, even divisive. Remember the controversies over executive orders and presidential vetoes? We'll dig into those critical moments and what they teach us about the limits of executive power later. 3. The judicial branch, the courts. And finally, we have the judicial branch, the interpreters of the law. The Supreme Court stands at the pinnacle of this branch, serving as the guardian of the Constitution. Its role is to resolve disputes, ensure laws align with constitutional principles, and, when necessary, act as a check on the other branches. But let me ask you this. Can 9 justices, appointed for life, truly represent the will of the people? Can they shape the future of an entire nation? The answer might surprise you, and it's something we'll explore in depth. Now, here's where the brilliance of the system shines through. The concept of checks and balances. This is the glue that holds everything together. Segment 3. Checks and balances. Now, let's talk about the backbone of the U.S. government, the principle of checks and balances. If the 3 branches of government are the gears of a machine, then checks and balances are the rules that ensure the gears work together without grinding against each other. This system isn't just a technicality, it's the cornerstone of our democracy, the invisible hand that keeps the government in check. Here's how it works. Each branch of government has its own unique powers, but no branch operates in isolation. Instead, each one has mechanisms to limit the powers of the others. Congress, for instance, has the authority to override a presidential veto with a 2/3 vote. The president, in turn, has the power to appoint Supreme Court justices. And the judicial branch? It has the authority to declare laws or executive actions unconstitutional. These checks ensure that no single branch becomes too powerful. But let's be honest, this system isn't flawless. There have been moments in history when the balance of power was tested, sometimes almost to the breaking point. For example, what happens when the executive and legislative branches are controlled by opposing parties? Or when the Supreme Court makes a decision that goes against popular opinion? These moments of conflict can create tension and even chaos, but they're also proof that the system is alive, dynamic, and responsive. And speaking of conflict, did you know there was a time when the Supreme Court made a ruling so controversial it almost led to a constitutional crisis? Don't worry, we'll get to that story soon. Segment 4. Challenges to the system. While the system of checks and balances is brilliant, it's not immune to challenges. Over the years, it has faced countless tests, some of which have revealed its vulnerabilities. Gerrymandering, for instance, manipulates electoral boundaries to favor certain political parties, undermining the principle of fair representation. Partisan politics, especially in recent decades, has created gridlock and deep divisions, making it harder for the government to function effectively. And let's not forget the growing influence of money in politics, which raises serious questions about whether the system truly serves the people or the interests of a wealthy few. Then there's the threat of foreign interference. The digital age has brought incredible opportunities, but it has also opened the door to new kinds of threats. Cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, and election meddling are challenges that the Founding Fathers could never have anticipated. Yet these threats have real implications for the balance of power and the integrity of our democracy. Let's face it, our system is like a high-maintenance car. It's powerful and impressive, but every now and then it needs a tune-up, and sometimes it feels like it's being held together with duct tape and a prayer. But here's the thing. The system, as flawed as it may be, has one unshakable foundation: we, the people. And that brings us to the most important part of this story: you. Segment 5. The power of the people. The beauty of the U.S. government isn't just in its structure or its principles. It's in its relationship with the people it serves. You see, the Constitution begins with 3 simple but powerful words: we, the people. Those words aren't just a slogan, they're a reminder that the ultimate power in this country doesn't belong to Congress, the President, or the Supreme Court. It belongs to you. Every time you vote, every time you write to your representatives, every time you speak out on an issue that matters to you, you're exercising that power. Democracy isn't a spectator sport. It's not something you watch from the sidelines. It's a full-contact game, and your participation is what keeps the system alive and thriving. Think about it. If the people stop participating, the system falters. If we let cynicism, apathy, or misinformation take over, the balance of power tilts, and the principles we hold dear are put at risk. But here's the good news. History has shown that when people come together, when they demand change, and when they hold their leaders accountable, incredible things can happen. And here's something to think about. The U.S. isn't the only country with a system of government built on checks and balances. How does our system compare to those of other nations? Are there lessons we can learn from them, or that they can learn from us? That's a discussion for another time. So, now that you know how power is divided in the United States government, the question is, what will you do with that knowledge? Will you be a passive observer, or will you take an active role in shaping the future of our democracy? Remember, the system isn't perfect, but it's resilient. It was designed to adapt, to evolve, and to endure. And the most important ingredient in that resilience is you. Your voice, your actions, and your commitment to staying informed and engaged are what keep this grand experiment in self-governance alive. If you found this video valuable, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your friends and family. Let's spark a conversation about the system that shapes our lives and how we can make it stronger together. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth explorations of the ideas and systems that shape our world. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and remember, the future isn't written, it's created. The pen is in your hands.